All right, so let's get more voices in reaction to the announcement of the ANC's new top 7 earlier on today. We are joined by political analyst Tessa Dooms as well as John Mulepo. Tessa, good afternoon. Let me start with you for now. Thank you for joining us here on the SABC.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
We, the people, have some information now to aid us, perhaps as we look at some of the decisions that need to be made come 2024. And I wonder how you'd weigh in on what has emerged from this top 7, how this is also going to influence dynamics come 2024.
Certainly, I think the ANC would have to take a long, hard look at itself in terms of the differences between what happened in the last few days and the Nasrec conference. You'll remember that the Nasrec conference, the ANC went in similarly divided along the lines that we've seen now, at least in terms of geography, with KZN having a candidate and President Cyril Ramaphosa coming through as a candidate. But what we saw in Nasrec was really very clear blocks that had emerged in terms of provincial blocks, and people voted along those blocks in the main, except of course in that case where we saw Mpumalanga, which at that point was the biggest province, deflect and give the presidency to Cyril Ramaphosa, but not give Cyril Ramaphosa his entire slate at that point. And so you saw a divided top 6 at that time and a divided NEC throughout the last 5 years. This year, what we see is something very similar, but it's actually a more fractious ANC that emerges out of this conference. What we know in the last few days is we've seen provinces like Limpopo, Eastern Cape, the Northwest, even Free State, very divided about who they're supporting. And so even within internal politics within the provinces, we're going to see a much more divided ANC going forward. We also see in the last few days that a lot of the horse trading and jostling for positions that we've known of the ANC has been about in the past is still very much entrenched. Slate politics that the ANC pretends is not there has clearly been the bedrock of this conference and creating slates. The president's grouping or faction or whatever you want to call it, within 24 hours before the vote had seemed to consolidate a new slate. And that is the way in which you see the voting patterns going. And I think that kind of politics is what we now know that the ANC is entrenched in, but it's divisive politics, and it's not going to be a politics that's going to lead to the kind of unity and renewal that President Cyril Ramaphosa has been talking about since the beginning. But I think the other thing that we need to talk about is what this means for the country. And even you heard from top officials this weekend from the ANC saying, the president himself, in fact, starting this, saying that a divided ANC will not draw the majority of the population towards the ANC. And I think we're going to see the ramifications of this very, very fractious ANC in the weeks and the months to come.
So Tessa, let me break down and perhaps hone in on what you said, just for clarity as well. So the ANC has been preaching about unity and renewal. And as we look at gender parity and generational mixes, how is that going looking at this new leadership? I'm only asking this because at the end of the day, when we look at public governance, the exercise of public authority and the execution of policies, I mean, it all depends on coherent political power that is both managed and administered. And I wonder if that's even encompassed at this point.
Yeah, at this point, the question about generational mix and gender representation has simply not come together in the way that I think particularly the Women's League and the Youth League had hoped. I think the Women's League got quite a boost in getting the top 7 position, the 7th position being the new DSG, the second DSG as it's called. And I think the gender parity looks much better because that second position exists. Had that not been the case, you would only have had 2 women emerging from this. But I think that even the positions that those women hold and the fact that when you look at the other nominations, women just didn't strongly come through in the nominations for any other positions. That just speaks to the ANC really not having taken gender as seriously. The Youth League and the youth representation is even worse. We see just no youth representation in that top 7, and we're going to have to pay close attention to see whether or not the ANC is able to, even in their top 80, find many positions for younger people. And I think that this speaks to representative politics for the country. When the country looks at any political party emerging from their internal contestations, the same is true for the EFF. They're currently going through political contestations in their conferences, heading towards their national conference next year. What does this tell us about this party and its ability to represent us as South Africans? And so when young people and women are underrepresented within a political party, that means that there's serious questions to be raised about whether or not that party as a whole represents those constituencies, which are large constituencies in our demographic as South Africans. We know that over 40 million of us are under the age of 40, and that's an important thing. And the ANC knows this. It's young people in the ANC who can tell us these facts. But yet the ANC does not seem to take that demographic seriously. And politics and a democracy, particularly democratic politics, needs to be about representation, and the ANC just does not seem to be able to get beyond personality politics towards representative politics.
I want to pick up on that because I wonder, since 1969, since the Morogoro conference in Tanzania, and we look at the party to date, its theoretical understanding of the current conditions in South Africa. I wonder, in your opinion, does the party have that theoretical understanding to cater to the socioeconomic conditions of South Africa? I'm only asking that because, it can't really rely on that strong liberation rhetoric that has been used. There's our new generations that obviously have more pressing needs that might not emotionally be connected. So I wonder if this top 7 is going to be able to rally more young people and get them to vote for them come 2024 and beyond.
Well, I think it would be surprising if the ANC's leadership that is not able to put its trust and confidence in young people is able to show young people that it represents its interest in this country. But I think your first part of your question is even more important about what are the big ideas that the ANC is walking away from this conference with. They have less than 24 hours. They've had some commissions. We've not seen much discussion about policy. Even in the policy conference, you didn't get, coming out of the July policy conference, a clear set of policy priorities that the ANC was coming forward with, new ideas, innovation. We just haven't seen that from the ANC. And so the question, the answer to your question is, I don't know. And I don't think most of the country knows what the ANC's tools of analysis, as they call them, are, what the kind of thinking behind their leadership is. We know what the personalities are. We know a lot about what the factions look like. We know about what the horse trading is about. But do we know what the ideas are that drive the African National Congress? Do we know what ideas that are going to be placed before the nation as we go into another election cycle? Even as the current governing party, because they don't need to wait for an election in order to implement new policy ideas and new policy suggestions. In fact, the clip that you just played now of the Minister of Finance talking about, continuity. But is this the kind of continuity we want? The one that has left our country in the state that it is in terms of unemployment, in terms of inequality, and has just not broken the back of the way in which the structure of our economy is right now. If this is the continuity that the ANC seeks, it is not based on ideas that have brought us very far as a country right now. And we're not seeing out of this conference a strong set of ideas emerging. And perhaps the president will surprise us tomorrow when he does his closing address and just, blow us out of the water with a new, renewed ANC based on ideas. But I don't see that coming just based on changing, a few faces in the top 7.
Tessa, we're going to leave the conversation there for now, but there are obviously more questions than answers at this point. So we'll continue to monitor and really see what unfolds. But Tessa Dooms, political analyst, weighing in and reflecting on the back of the top 7 leadership structure that was announced a little earlier on today for the African National Congress at its 55th National Elective Congress.